Welcome to Shirt Show Summer Camp.
Today in this video, we're actually going to be traveling to St. Louis to visit a shop and go do a screen print summer camp. Now, if you've been watching the videos, you might recognize where I'm at. Well, I'm in the basement. This is exactly where our screen print journey began. If you're new to the channel, my name is Baav, and I've been running my own screen printing and embroidery company for the past 6 years now, and it all started in this humble basement. Today, I'm going to a screen print summer camp to learn how to print the best white. And this summer camp is the first of its kind because something like this has never been done before. All right, now that we're here in the hotel, it's about 2:30 right now. The summer camp doesn't start until 5. Now, I haven't ate all day. I'm gonna try to kill time and find some food until 5 o'clock. I'll see you then. Woo! The lighting in this bathroom goes crazy. All right, check this out. This whole time, I thought we were supposed to meet here from 5 to 7 at ShirtCon, but it turns out I'm at the totally wrong place. Somehow my email told me to be here from 5 to 7, but I was supposed to be in downtown St. Louis at a place called the Maryland House, which is crazy because I'm from Maryland.
Gold eye-range.
Hey man.
My God.
Bobby.
Yep.
Head to your drop off.
It's hot. It's cool in here though. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. All right, you guys, now I'm in downtown St. Louis. Now for this, I'm really getting out of my comfort zone for this, especially with this jig walking around recording and vlogging this, and then at the same time coming out to an event like this where I know practically not a lot of people. But life begins at the end of your comfort zone, and if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. So I really wanted to come here and get to experience this hands-on and see a shop hands-on. So I'm really excited about this. I know it's gonna be worth it, and I'm taking you guys along with me. Now that's gonna conclude day 1 of this trip. Now I didn't end up vlogging during the happy hour just because there was so many people and I don't know everyone there, and I didn't want to just pop out a camera, but I met some dope people, had some great conversations with a lot of cool people. Anyways, tomorrow is the actual Shirt Show summer camp that I'm super excited about. There's gonna be a lot of good information there and talking to people again, of course, and I'm definitely bringing you all along with me on that. Good morning. Let's go for day 2.
Welcome to Shirt Show Summer Camp. Key is to make friends. I was walking by the dryer one day a while back and I noticed our white wasn't what it could be, and I was disappointed. Like, it was sort of dull and...
Where's Kyle?
It looked kind of like Upstate's prints, really. But I knew we could do better. So you'll notice there's a QR code on our toilets too, if you're curious. Not sure how to work them. We've got answers. So check that one out.
Now this part is all about screens and emulsion. I tried to keep the most important key points in here for you all to learn, so buckle up.
So, I'm Kevin Crumlin. So we manufacture the emulsions that these guys are using here.
I'm Kyle. I'm from Shercon.
But, you know, as this whole entire concept was put together, it was put with printing your best white in mind, right? So what does that matter as far as the screen run? You know, this is really the most important area for getting things right if you want things to be successful on press, right? Screen printing is called screen printing for a reason. The screen is important, so it all starts here. Understanding EOM. And so what is EOM? Have you guys all heard that phrase before? So what EOM is emulsion over mesh. That's going to be the difference in the thickness of your overall stencil with the emulsion versus the mesh, and what that difference is between that thickness, right? So there's tons of different variables that play into what that thickness of your emulsion is. You know, the emulsion that you're using, how many passes that you're coating on your screen. The edge profile, is your scoop coater a little bit more round on the edge? Is it sharper on the edge? The pressure that you're coating your screens. The mesh counts, you know? The thread diameters. All of those things are going to factor into how thick your emulsion is going to be coated on your screen. So, we like to know what that thickness is, right? We've got all these fancy tools, which are great to have. Not every shop has these tools for checking your EOM, and mostly that reason is because, like, this is the gauge that I have. This Fisher isoscope is around like $1,300, $1,400. Not everybody wants to spend that for a piece of a little tool to like check your thickness of your screen. If you don't have this type of equipment, the biggest thing is feeling your screens. Get handsy with them, right? If you can't feel...
I have one quick question about that.
Yeah.
So on Amazon or other places, you can buy like paint thickness, and it looks like they're more like automotive
Yep.
paint
Sure.
thickness gauges for pretty reasons.
Yeah,
It's I know what this is.
Are those?
And so we have this one too. So I've got literature in these two on this particular unit here, which is not this $1,500 one, right? It's
So I bought
this
that
is
one actually a couple months ago.
okay. Yep. So yeah, this is like around 300, 350 or something like that, right?
EUM percentage. So EUM percentage would be the percentage over the mesh itself. So if I have an 18% EUM, my stencil thickness is 18% larger than the mesh.
Right.
Like, so, and then if you just do that percentage, it should all be pretty consistent math.
But you just are going to sandwich that stencil in between the plate and the probe itself. So we'll start with, we measure just the mesh itself. And I usually take a bunch of measurements and I let it average out for me. So my gauge here will actually, I can do as many as I want. I hit average, I'm at 51 microns is what this is reading. Now, we'll actually take measurements of stencil with the emulsion. And you can take it all over the screen. It's good to kind of map things out too. So when we're taking this measurement, we're going to try to find out, you know, how consistent it is throughout the screen, but also from screen to screen to screen. Now, you don't have to do this on every single screen. That's probably overkill. But finding out everything, the way that you have things set up, that you're coating things one at one, that you're using this pressure angle, keep everything consistent, you'll know that it's going to stay consistent. But it's good to take these measurements that you can go back to, right? So a month down the road, all of a sudden, you feel like you're having poor print results out on press. Now you can go back to what those measurements were a month ago when you had good results and see how they compare. If things are off, now you have to make adjustments in this room, right? Maybe you have to coat a little bit thicker. Maybe you're just starting to coat things too fast than what you were before, or whatever the case is. So this measured at 61. So that's a 10 micron difference, right? So if you were to take that 50 microns, which is of the mesh itself, 20% of that is So we're right in that 10 to 20% that we're really looking for. And I tend to lean more on the heavy side, right? So you want to lean towards that more of that 20% ballpark range, and that's right where we're at here. So like I said, there's so many different variables that play into that and whatnot too. But something like this, so Kyle, when he takes his measurements, he's got the sheet that he records everything.
Yeah, so I do this once a week usually, and I pick per mesh count 6 random screens, and I'll test the EOM, and then I'll do the average of those 6 screens to make sure that it's not crazy different from last week. Because if it's crazy different from last week, I'm probably gonna have to adjust stuff on press or adjust stuff in here to make like why is it different? You know, 'cause you just don't want consistency is the name of it. Where if everything stays the same in here, it should be able to stay more or less the same out there. And if you start throwing a wrench and stuff, that's when you're like, I don't know what happened, you know.
And along with that goes, climate control. If you can keep your climate of your screen room the same all the time, you can expect those same results versus, when we look at season to season, how humidity changes, right? Winter, it's going to be a lot drier than it is in the middle of the summer. So if you're using, say, like a pure photopolymer, when humidity is up, pure photopolymers will actually expose faster. If you're using a dual cure emulsion, when humidity is up, they'll actually expose slower. So knowing what those variables and how that affects your exposure time, and that just goes back to knowing where you're at. And the only way you can know where you're at is by taking these measurements, by doing exposure testing. You can't just say, I did my screen today, I took my measurements, I'm good, it's gonna be good forever, right? My exposure times today are perfect. I can use that same time for the rest of my life, right? That's not necessarily the case. Things are going to fluctuate. So it's good to at least use those quality control tools to find out if things are changing and where you're at today versus where you were at a month ago. Things like the tension of your screen. It's good to take measurements of the tension of your screen. And as it gets to a certain point, it loses its tension, get a razor blade out and cut that screen off. Don't use that screen until the end of its life. As that tension goes down, it's going to actually hold more emulsion, so you're going to have a thicker stencil because tension is down, right? So now you've got one screen that's got a much thicker EOM versus the rest of your screens, which goes back to your exposure times won't be correct. You'll be underexposed on that screen. Also, when you go out on press, you're going to have different ink coverage. So all of those things just kind of factor together in keeping everything homogeneous and the same and consistent. Not everybody uses the same emulsion, right? Not everybody uses the same emulsion from the same manufacturer even, obviously, right? So how the characteristics of that particular emulsion factor into what that EOM is a huge thing as well. So when we look at, there's another sheet in here that I've got, which is our cheaper emulsions, really cheaper. And what this really goes back to is the solid content of that emulsion. So Chroma Blue, which is what they use at the shirt pump, is 50% solids, right? There's other emulsions that are out there that are in the 30%. So what does that mean? A 50% emulsion, 50% solids, when that screen is drying, that means 50% of that, which is water, is going to evaporate away and you're left with half that you started with. Say that emulsion is 30% solids, it means that it's 70% water, right? So 70% of what you put on that screen is going to evaporate away when it's dry. So now is it the same? If you coat screens the same with the 50% solid versus 30% solids, 1-in-1, you're going to have a much thinner stencil with that 30% solids than you will with the 50% solids. So when we really dive into it, this really is kind of a case study that I did, and we had two M&R unit coats, the same unit that they're using here, side by side, and we put Chroma Blue on one at 50%, and we put Brand X, which I won't say what it is, in the other unit. And what we found was, to get the exact same EOM, we could coat Chroma Blue 1-in-1, and the other emulsion had to be 2-in-2 to be the same stencil thickness. right? So now double production time.
So it's more water.
Exactly, right? So as it dries, more of that water is evaporating away out of the lower solids. So to get that same end result, comparing apples to apples, we had to coat it 2 and 2 versus 1 and 1. So now that's double production time, as well as how much emulsion that you're using, right? So we got 60 screens out of the Chromo Blue bucket, where we only got 42 screens out of Brand X. Now, we were using primarily 110 mesh, so it's sucking up quite a bit of emulsion, right? But we kept everything consistent from each one. So obviously, if they say this emulsion is $5 less a gallon, and people hear that and they go, well, I'm saving, right? I'm saving $5 every bucket. No, you're actually using double the product. You're not saving $5, you're probably losing $50 for every gallon that you're using.
To add to that, if you're not measuring the EOM and you're not keeping track of these numbers and you're just like, oh, I got a new emulsion because this one's cheaper and I coat 1-1 like I always do, and now you're getting different results on press because you now have a thinner stencil, and you're like, time on press is worth more than $5 a gallon. You start like, I've wasted 2 hours out here. That's, who cares
Sure,
about $5 a gallon? Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah, keeping tally of everything, and whenever you're changing something, make sure that you're always counting math all the time, everything like this, and as much as you can, as much as you have time for,
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a difference between testing and lab setting and production, right? You have to be able to get work out the door. Production is all about throughput and making money. It's not about having everything absolutely perfect. But if you can have everything perfect, production will go much smoother as well. On the back side of the sheet, this really shows, the difference of what that EOM means for your print, right? So if you have too thin of EOM, your stencil's too thin, you're going to get that sawtoothing on your edges. You're going to have not very good and crisp, clean edges. Whereas if your emulsion is too thick, chances are it's not going to clear through that screen the way that you want it to, and it's going to leave you with an inconsistent print on press, right? If you have that perfect target of that 10 to 20% EOM range, that's where you're going to have the sweet spot of good ink coverage, good resolution, and how that all kind of fits together.
I would say most of the time people have a problem with it being too thin, and then what you have to do is adjust for that on the press, and then you'll have to go up in pressure, which drives the ink further into the substrate, which is going to make it look less opaque. And then you're creating all these other problems. You kind of want the ink to sit on the top of the shirt, and the way to do that is to have a thicker stencil. Like I talk to the guys a lot about how I talk about it is if I had a big thing of Post-its, right, and I drilled a hole in it and I swept ink through it and then picked it up, it would be that thing. But then if I take one Post-it note and do the same thing, it's that thing. So you want to find that spot where the stencil is the right amount to get to the opacity and everything that you need.
Yeah, like I said, it's good to have those measurements that you can go back to. It's not about doing measurements every single day on every single screen, but it's good to get things dialed in, know where your sweet spot is, run with it, and then come back and just make sure that nothing has changed. That's the biggest thing. If you don't take those measurements, you don't know if things have changed. So when you have a problem out on press, now you're going down this checklist blind, right? If you know where you were a month ago when prints were looking perfect, now you've got a target that you can go back to once again. Instead of going, all right, well, let's just try coating screens a little bit different this time and see if it looks better out on press. No, now you know what you're trying to achieve, you know what you're trying to hit, and that's the only way you can do that is by actually having measurements. Good to have the tools, but if you don't have the tools, get handsy with your screen, right? If you can't feel this, if you can't feel the edges, you can't feel your artwork, it's telling me that you have too thin of a stencil.
You said you measured this one. This was a 20%.
20%.
On the 230, it's actually 230 thin.
Yeah.
after nerding out heavy in the screen room, now we're going to go into exactly which screens you should use to get the best white. And that involves using thin thread screens. Let's jump into a comparison side by side. Now right off the bat, you can tell that the left side is a lot more open than the standard thread, which allows the ink to flow better through the screen because there's more of an opening versus the standard thread. And let's face it, the smoother the flow, the smoother the print. So now let's jump into printing a design and splitting it in half and doing half of it in thin thread, half of it in standard thread. So the first print right here is going to be in thin thread. One pass, all the same variables, all the same off contact, all the same pressure. This is standard thread. And you can already see that the ink didn't clear on the standard thread. And here's the night and day difference between the two screens. As you can see, there's just a huge difference between the thin thread and the standard thread, and that goes back to the ink not flowing. Here's the thin thread screen. As you can see, the ink just cleared the screen. And here's the standard screen. As you can see, there's too much ink left behind. It didn't flow well, which means it didn't print well. Alright everybody, right now everybody's having lunch. So far this event has been amazing. You're learning a lot of things and you're getting to network and talk to other shop owners that are doing the same thing as you and just networking. Also, you get to see this amazing shop with all these autos, all this organization and garments and goods and how they operate here. It's honestly an amazing experience. And now we learned about how to actually screen print the best white, and it all comes down to pressure. Screen printing is a form of printing where the ink is supposed to lay right on top of the shirt or the substrate and not inside of it. So when you're printing with a lot of pressure, you're kind of forcing it to go inside, and then you're just losing details where really you're just supposed to put enough pressure to clear the screen and have a clean print. On the left side, that's a lot of pressure. On the right side, that's just a smooth, clean, crisp print. As you can see, there's a huge difference. On the left side, if when you're jamming the ink on the shirt, you're losing a ton of details versus the right side. I mean, there's a night and day difference between the two, and we all want to strive to be the right. Alright you guys, it's 3 in the afternoon. We just wrapped up a badass day with a bunch of educational stuff that we all learned, and I want to give a shout out to my man Nick Wood right here. He actually sold me my first screen print press from Ryonet back in 2016, 2017, and he's just been a killer addition to me, helping me out and getting on the phone call with me back then and just pointing me in the right direction, and I'm gonna let him just take it from here.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, I remember the first time Bob called in, he had said, I want to print for streetwear brands. I got this really good idea. And you know, it's at such a young age, he just crushed it. Seeing the growth has been unbelievable. So I keep up on all the YouTube videos. I keep up on all the Instagram pages. So yeah, bro, keep it up.
And now he's with Graphic Source actually, and he helps people like you, printers, whoever needs artwork or anything. He staffs full-time staff for shops like that. And you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I started, we had 4 people in Honduras. We always had a pretty big team in Thailand that does our digitizing and revector. So we're about 180 in Thailand. But yeah, so when I started, we had 4 people in Honduras focusing on screen printing, revectorization, creative art. That team has now grown to just over 500. So last month we just hit over 500 people. So and they crush it. That's
crushing it, man. How can they get in contact with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, so graphicsource.com, GRAPH, the letter X, and then source.com. Cell phones 360-907-4926. Instagrams @reallynickwood.
You're going all in. They get your cell phone?
Yeah,
that's a big thing. You guys should really contact him. He's a book full of knowledge. He'll help you out, and if he can't help you out, he's gonna point you in the right direction for somebody that can help you out. This is the man. And now it's time for us to get a tour of Shirt Kong, personally from Andy Rudman, the owner of Shirt Kong, and the place where this whole summer camp took place.
Print slower. The next Kyle.
Alright, y'all, we just left the show. I'm with David right here. I met him at the show. What's up, y'all? Giving me a ride. What do you think of the show, man? How'd you like it?
I liked it a lot, really. I think everybody there was really cool. You know, a lot of good information too from these guys. You know, it's a good group of people, and I think I had a really good time, man.
Yeah, man. And he came out here alone, just like me, not knowing anybody. But you know, you gotta get out your comfort zone. And if that wasn't enough, they decided to host another private dinner, and this was all private. This whole room and bar was reserved for everyone a part of Shirt Show, and it was just another awesome experience to make friends, network, talk to people. I feel like that's what this whole show was all about, was everyone just communicating with each other and making friends. That's what it's all about. Shout out to Shirt Show for putting on this summer camp. It was an awesome event, and I met some really good people, made a lot of friends. Shout out to all of them. Now, I tried to record this summer camp as best as I could. I tried to keep the most important key points in this video for you all to learn from, especially when it comes down to printing the best white. And I know there was a large emphasis on the screen room and the EOM and emulsion and all of that, but you gotta understand that's exactly where everything starts. That's the step one. It's literally in the name. Screen printing starts with the screen. Either way, I tried to put it together as best as I could from a point of view where you all can learn from and enjoy watching. And for those of you that were at the summer camp, it'd be cool to leave your 2 cents down in the comment section to share your experience. Either way, I had a great time and would do this all over again in a heartbeat. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know, because this is the first time I'm actually recording the process of going to an event and vlogging the whole thing outside of the shop to give you guys the experience of what happened. Let me know if I should do this more for other events and other things that I go to. It'd be cool to keep this going because I had a good time, but it was definitely a grind to get these shots. Anyways, if you want to stay up to date with me and the shop, make sure you follow us on all socials. Other than that, always remember, no grind, no glory. I'll see you in the next one.